Welcome to Showbiz Sports Shit Podcast. We're just two brothers who just talk sports and give our opinions on today's topics. This is for entertainment purposes only, and these are strictly our opinions and views. So sit back for the next hour and enjoy our sports takes. All right, we are on night number 3, episode 3 of the week. It has been a blast. We had Arrowhead Chief Podcast with us Monday night, covering some Chiefs talk, got his Super Bowl predictions. Last night we had Tressa and Alyssa from Unhinged and Unplugged podcast. The two wild New Yorkers gave their thoughts on the Super Bowl, and they also made their picks. Tonight we have, and this is probably one of the more exciting episodes for us, just based on, you guys know, you've listened to our episodes, we're huge into fantasy sports. We love fantasy football. We have a fantasy hockey league going on right now. This is a different type of fantasy sport. And then, Chris, I'm going to let you go ahead and have it. I want you to introduce yourself, give us your background, and take the floor and explain what it is exactly that makes your fantasy sports league and setup different than kind of what everyone's maybe used to.
Absolutely, Corey Austin, thank you. So I'm Chris Hauck, and I'm co-founder of Smash Up Fantasy Sports. I am not a crazy New Yorker. I'm the opposite coast. So I'm a crazy LA, San Francisco, Sacramento. I've lived everywhere. I actually live in Hawaii now, so all over the West Coast. So I'm ready to go take on those New Yorkers anytime they want to arm wrestle or play fantasy or whatever. So a couple of years ago, we just, my co-founder Hybe and I got a little bit bored with fantasy. It's very a little different. Like, we weren't bored. We're still playing. We just kind of felt like it had been the same thing for a long time. You had betting, which was fairly new, but, the traditional fantasy games, like if you go look at ESPN fantasy right now, we've got this in a couple investor decks where it's like, you look at it right now, and it's basically a slightly better UI of exactly what they had in 2002. Mm-hmm. Like, almost the same. You got pictures of the players now, back then just names. Probably some stuff like fractional scoring, super flex, but for the most part, it's the same game. So, let's do something new. Mm-hmm. I think what really excited us is that there's so many games we love and grew up playing that had like these proven mechanics. There should be a way to bring some of these things to fantasy. And so we'll take through a little bit of this tonight, but we've done everything from like Smash cards, which are kind of like strategy cards. Like you see in a lot of strategy card games. We, not now in the playoffs, but in the regular season, we had a single player game that we launched partway through the year that was super fun. Actually had a ton of uptake, and most people played all the way through and tried to beat it. But little Street Fighter style, where each week you played a boss who was controlled by basically a lineup set by an analyst from the fantasy football world. But you had to beat boss 1 to go to boss 2, just like in a game like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah.
And it got tougher and tougher. They had some Smash cards and stuff you didn't, so it got tougher and tougher. I think the one thing I'd at least remark is that, I know a couple people in your audience might hear Smash cards and like instantly have a reaction like, oh, is this one of those games I've got to go buy a bunch of packs and collect stuff or subscribe? If it's not gambling, if it's not entry fees, no. Here, and we can talk about this. I can show you in a little bit, but everything's free. Everyone has access to the same Smash cards. The challenge is that everyone has a salary cap for the Smash cards, so you can't just go say, well, it's free, I'm going to go play the 10 best. No, you get a salary cap. So you got to make some decisions, based on your team and who you think is going to go off what you want to play. But it's free to use. You don't have to go like buy it in order to play. You just go jump in and you strategize.
Yeah, so when you say there's like a salary cap and whatnot, so do you pull like the salaries and everything from just like a bunch of sources and then like median price them, or do you come up with your own pricing? Is it like a basically daily fantasy when it comes to the pricing?
Yeah, it's like daily fantasy for weekly tournaments, and I think our pricing is pretty comparable to DraftKings.
Okay.
We get a data feed directly from SDIO, one of the big, sports data providers, which is how we have fast, accurate, real-time data, like as the games are going on. And they've got their pricing stuff that some of the other big companies use too. So you got a cap for the players. That one's easy. the cap for the salary card is more difficult. We had to come up with that, and so we have an econometrist on our team who ran the numbers. So it's partially his really good calculations, and at times partially, a bit. So one thing we did this last year, we did it again this year. We added 10 cards for the Super Bowl. Special art. They're all, tributes to, in this case, the Eagles and the Chiefs. Last year, the Niners and the Chiefs. Hoping it'll be the Eagles and the Bills, but enter the Chiefs again. But last year we also did one for Vegas. This year we've got a card for it's a tribute to New Orleans. So the mechanics are kind of centered around that, but so is the art. Collectible. I mean, I call it a collectible, but again, you don't pay for anything. It's just a unique thing that if you play, you can always kind of go back and see in your history that you played these cards. But yeah, so for those, we certainly didn't have time to run a bunch of data. It's a little bit of us looking at, okay, where do we think this card falls similar to other cards? And let's take our best guess of what some fair pricing is. And for your listeners, we probably underpriced them slightly to encourage people to play them. So if you want to get a little bit of edge in the competition, maybe try some of those special Super Bowl cards.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about the growth from when you first started, and what's it, again, keeping something like this and, keeping people interested in continuing to use. So just kind of give us a layout of were there struggles at the beginning? What do you guys do continuously and to make it quality, essentially? Because that's essentially what everyone's going to look for. They want quality, simple. It's not something that they really want to, we live in a day and age where they want everything kind of right there, kind of mapped out. So go ahead and give us some insight on that.
So I think it's interesting. I think it's from where we started, it's been a lot of hard work. Probably not surprising to you guys. I think there's a lot to build in terms of the game. I come from a background very grounded in customer research. So I think everything we've done, we have talked to customers, which a little less for year one, where we kind of need to get in quickly, but a little bit more for, this you could also call this our year one. We kind of launched late last year just to run the water through the pipes. We're developing more games this year. And the single player is a great example. We had a few ideas for what we could do. We started with the tournaments last year. We want to get to leagues as well this year. We had some ideas for how to do it, particularly because we knew we didn't have time to develop full draft and waiver wire and trades. And so we had some ideas that were creative. We talked to some real customers, a number of them, and heard a lot of people say, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'd be interested, but I don't know if I could convince, 9 to 11 other friends to do it.
Right.
And that's kind of where the single player came from. We wanted to use some of those ideas. And we said, well, if we can't get them in, it might be a bridge too far to put into a league. We've already got to convince people to come try. But what if we do something like single player, which is not only a cool and different dynamic, our mechanic, but also it's lower commitment, right? You can give it a shot. If you don't like it, if this is stupid, you could just leave, no harm, no foul. But if you enjoy, you can keep playing. And actually, we see single players being one really fertile testing ground to test new mechanics before they go into something like a season-long product where, again, it's a long commitment. You've got to convince a lot of people to do it. So we kind of see what people enjoy. And then if we put in season-long, hopefully because thousands of people have played, the single player and seen that mechanic, now say, oh, this is fun. If me and two of my friends have done it, way easier to convince a few other friends, how much fun this is and we should try it. But as someone who spent years trying to get their friends to do an auction draft, and finally in League Rise Commission, I just said, we're doing an auction draft. You can quit if you don't like it. And I said, fine, we'll try it. And then they were, no, now that we've never gone back. Every other league does it. I know how hard it can be to get that first push.
Yep.
Yeah, we've done kind of both. We're just a standard snake draft right now with what we do. I think a baseball league we did one year, we did an auction style draft. And I know there's a handful of guys in our league currently that do want to kind of look at that auction style as well. So kind of give us a breakdown of, and we'll talk about the tournament that you guys just posted not too long ago. That seemed intriguing as well. It's buy-ins and prize monies. How do they get to that?
So we're not really focused on monetization yet. We'll obviously need to get there. I think our ideal though would be to do it more as a video game type company or a gaming company as opposed to, betting lines, and there's a lot of sports books out there, right? I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what we're not like diametrically opposed to it. It's not like we didn't go for gaming for like religious reasons or something, but we just think that that's a lot of companies doing that, and we want to try something different. So for now, it's simple, right? Like right now, it's you come in, there's no entry fees, you just enter a tournament, and there's prizes, right? And obviously, like our weekly tournament, there's $1,500 in cash prizes, goes to the top 50, about $700 to first place. Not bad for something free you're playing. Certainly
Mm-hmm.
not as much as going to DraftKings and putting down $20 in a league with 100,000 people, where top prize gets like $200,000. But certainly a chance to come in and win. Only caveat, as usual, it's more of a sweepstakes. It's not gambling, but still, even with sweepstakes rule in the country, got to be 18. Certain things by location, where some states it's 19. We're forced to follow that. So younger listeners can still come and play and have a good time, but to win and actually withdraw the money, you've got to be 18.
Well, and I think with just a way of how fantasy sports in general are, it does get kind of watered down. So if you're making bold moves like this, you got to make something that's unique. You have to make something that kind of stands out, and just I think that's what me and my brother were talking about before you came on here. He was kind of interested because he was kind of peeping your guys' Instagram and kind of seeing your guys' layout and what it was looking like. So where does that creativity come from? Is it just kind of just sitting around talking to your buddies? Is it one of those where it's just random? I have random thoughts at 10:30 at night. I'm like, I'm gonna have to remember that for work tomorrow, because it's just like the creativity flows differently with everybody. So kind of where's that kind of come from with you guys?
It is all over the place. So I think we love to have ideas. We're just very strong about how we vet ideas. And you kind of mentioned the customer research earlier. So really big on making sure that we're trying to like follow where there's actually demand. Like, what do people actually want to do? But with that said, I'll tell you the original idea. No one ever guessed this. I really wish we had a story like Reed Hastings in Netflix, where he's like, I got a late fee and I said I wanted to murder Blockbuster, and he did. Like that. That's a fun story.
Yeah.
Ours is more probably a fun story that you guys, your listeners, might relate to a little more than Reed, which is Hybo and I, when this came up, we just finished the fantasy football season. We were watching March Madness together in Chicago at a bar, drinking beer, and that's when we just started saying, "Hey, I saw him. I'm like, hey, why don't you do fantasy basketball with us?" And, I'm kind of bored. I still do some football, but mostly because I really like playing with our friends. But it
Yep.
just feels like every year it's the same thing. The draft is super fun, but then you pick up some free agents, you make some start decisions, but really, like, you're always going to start Josh Allen. That's not really a decision.
Yeah.
You're mostly deciding like which cruddy tight end do I want to start, or what number 3 wide receiver with 3 guys in a bye. So there's some strategy. Maybe you make a trade, but not all leagues are really do trades. It kind of depends on
Yeah.
who you're playing with and how open they are. So apparently, we should be playing with Nico Harrison, though. I want to invite him to my fantasy league next year.
Hey, he'll give you anybody you want for not very much. I mean, we see that. And to go back to your point on, you're going to start Josh Allen every week. I think it's kind of funny when you see the sit-em stardoms on NFL Network every now and then. You see the list that they kind of throw out there, and you're like, who in their right mind is going to have that person on their team and not start them? Like, is this really making the
Yeah.
bold statement that you think, like, yeah, you're going to probably start Derrick Henry every week? So, yeah, I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, it's like, I get it, but we also kind of review our season each time after each fantasy season. It's kind of like, yes, it's fun doing the same thing over and over again. It's like what can we do to, I know my brother plays in one league where they have bonus points just to kind of make it fun, where,
Yeah.
you get extra points for a play over 50 yards, or bro, you can probably explain that one a little more, but just the bonus points just to kind of keep people interested and intrigued if they're not doing so hot.
Yeah, and I think it's spot on. The most, I don't want to say it's the most important, but like the thing that you said that gets me the most like excited about it is it's different. right? Like we're getting to that age. I'm not going to age, like we're all a certain age where we've been playing for a certain amount of years / decades. No need to get into the numbers. But we've all been
We
doing
all
this.
feel a little sore when we wake up and we slept fine. We'll just put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just put it
If
that
people our age
simple.
will know exactly what that means.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I get little, I'm on the IL for like 10 days for my thumb making moves and stuff, but just something different, right? Like nothing's really changed. It's the same stuff every year. And that's why like I've stopped doing fantasy baseball and just to give myself a break because I do want to do like the football and hockey, but just doing
Yeah.
the same boring, same thing year around in these leagues, it gets kind of, just repetitive and not very exciting, right? So I think when you said this is something different, I think that first and foremost should just pique the ears of a lot of people because most of these fantasy formats have stayed the same, little changes that don't really change much to the user. So, yeah, I like the idea of different. I know when I went on there and it had like that like arcade Tecmo Bowl feel to it when I first like went to the page, I was like, this is awesome. Like this is already better than just like the brick page you bring up on Yahoo or ESPN, and it's just it doesn't draw you in. So I think from the creativity standpoint and the different standpoint, like that alone should draw a lot of interest.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the whole gaming versus gambling thing, right? I think with
Yep.
we even saw this in some of the research when we talk to people like, look, if I'm doing player props, if I'm doing betting lines, I want maybe a little bit more seriousness. I want to see like a photo. I want to make sure I'm not accidentally, confusing a player because they're, cartoonified format. But for fun, for gaming, even if there's money involved, if I'm playing a game, I want it to be fun. I want it to feel like fun because today I go to, and nothing against these companies. I'm not
Right.
trash talking them at all. They're
Mhm.
hugely successful, right? And then they're doing what we just talked about people wanted. But you do go to like a DraftKings, you do go to a FanDuel, and it almost feels like you're looking at like an Excel sheet or something. It's
Yeah.
here's laid out very clear, which is great for
Mhm.
what they're doing. But for what we're doing, people are like, first and foremost, I'm a sports fan. I want to have fun. I want to feel like I'm enjoying this. And I think a lot of our future roadmap, got to be careful with what I say because I can piss off the programmer sometimes when I say something is coming. A lot being figured out, but a
Yeah.
lot of exciting stuff I think pushes the gaming further, and then the whole experience is going to be one that just feels like you're immersed in sports and you're just having a good time.
Right, like it's supposed to be entertaining, right? That's what it's about. And like everything sports related should be entertaining. So I think that's spot on. And that everyone doesn't think that way, right? Some people want the analytic, give me everything laid out in that spreadsheet so I know what I'm placing bets on or whatnot. But I do think there's a large group that's like, I just want it to be entertaining, right? Like that's why we love sports first and foremost, right? Like don't get me wrong, I don't mind winning some money on some bets. I'm not saying that.
Of
But
course,
the big one, we want it to be fun and entertaining, especially if it's something we're doing half the year, most of the year, annually type deal. So, yeah, I think that's great. That's one of my favorite things of since we've started this podcast was just finding different things, different people, kind of getting out of the shoebox per se of what
well,
sports
now
are.
have you guys did you this last year? Have you been yet to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton?
No, but we've been talking about Canton so much the last few years.
We have, yep.
Just the experience. We just random thoughts come up, and we're just like, why have we not been to Canton yet?
Well, there's in August every year. There's a giant fantasy football expo, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is. We went last year. A lot of great companies, a lot of creativity. The breadth of it will really surprise you, and it's all people like fantasy football. So you during the day there's some serious stuff, but then 5 o'clock. Well, some people aren't waiting till 5 even, but at a certain point of the day, people start drinking. It's beer. It's fun. It's a good time. There's even a beer pong tournament at one point. So
Okay.
separate from this, happy to pass the details on. We should definitely look at coming out next year.
Yeah,
This coming.
that would be an absolute blast. Honestly,
Yeah.
it really would. Let's one more thought on this before we jump into some fun Super Bowl talk. Talk to us about the big game. that you guys have set up. Do you guys limit the captain number of people who enter, or is it just basically anyone and everyone's free reign?
Yeah, so for now, for this year, still it's anyone and everyone. So we've got a couple of tournaments, and I don't know if you want, I can even share a screen and give people a quick visual demonstration. I don't know if you users can see all the video, or if that's something you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, we do video. Audio comes out first. Videos typically will come out on the weekend, so it gives us a chance to kind of piece stuff together. So you're more than welcome to give a share, and then people can hop on the YouTube and kind of watch.
Oh, here, let me share, and for people who are listening, we'll try to keep this from being too long and describe a little bit of what's on the screen. So this is our website, right? smeshofsports.com. If I click start, it kind of takes me through to the different games. And we're looking at here is like the weekly tournaments. So I can click in. 2 tournaments this week. There's the main tournament with 1,500 prizes. We also have something called a GM challenge where it's smaller. It's more for fun. The winner gets $25, a little something. The GM challenge is simpler. Well, let me start with the weekly challenge. So here I come in. I can set a lineup. You can kind of see on my screen. I've got my salary cap for my players. I've got one for the cards. I'm not going to take everyone through a whole thing of building. By the way, regular season for the most part, it's very traditional positions. When we hit the conference championships, due just the lack of teams and players, we go to a style we call Flex 9. So it means you can play any player in any position as long as they fit under the salary cap. So I can play Hurts and Mahomes, Barkley, Brown. I'm going to run out of money pretty quick if I just play all the best players. But that's fine. You also don't have to start an entire lineup. So I could just say I want these 5, and I'm good with it.
That's so awesome.
Nice.
And I can go to the cards. I can pick all the various things. If I think, I'm not going to go through every card. I know there's limited time here. So if you're listening, I'm scrolling through kind of the smash card options. So I can click on one and see it. So Turbo Boost, for example, is a card where you double the points from your quarterback's rushing yards and touchdowns. So if I think that Hurts is going to run the ball, going to be blitzed a lot, going to be running the ball, this is a card that could score me a lot of points. It's going to cost me about a quarter of my salary cap. Actually, that's most weeks. I think this week we've given people slightly higher caps. They can play more cards with so few players. Want to get a little more variance out there, so we don't have a bunch of ties. On the other hand, maybe I think the Chiefs are going to get unfair advantage. So one of those special Super Bowl cards is 12th Man. If you can't see this, it is a zebra with red and gold stripes.
Yes.
I'll let you guess why. So I play on a player, I get an extra 2 points for every touchdown they have, or 3 total. I'm going to put that one here on Mahomes. And then just, one more here maybe for my running back. I'm going to come in here and on him, maybe I'm going to put a higher end card. We're going to put something like Unstoppable Freight Train, just to show the diversity of the cards, right? So some are adding to stats, some are based on categories. Here's one, for example, a little bit like the bonuses you're talking about, Austin, where if you place in your running back and he has a run of 30 yards or more, then it's worth 30 points. So it's kind of like a prop bet in a way, all or nothing. So if I think, okay, Saquon, he's going to break a long one, I can put that on him. I won't take you through everything else. I think you guys kind of get the drift.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for the Super Bowl. The one other kind of fun one we have is this, we call it GM Challenge. So we go back to weekly here. GM Challenge is fun. In the GM Challenges, there are certain cards that are applied to everybody. So the last game is very clean DFS style. I pick my players and I add what I think is going to happen. Here, every single player in the tournament has these 2 cards played. Doesn't affect their smash card budget. These are free, but everyone has them. This one, Risk It for the Biscuit. It's kind of like the Unstoppable Freight Train, where for your quarterback, running back, or wide receiver, anyone in your whole lineup, if they hit certain thresholds, you get 20 points for each one of those. So kind of rewards, picking guys who are going to have big plays. And then Mud Bowl. This is our card based a little bit on the 86 Bears. So your defense and your kicker, they get ×3, but the rest of your position players all get times 0.9. So a little extra motivation to pick a good kicker or defense. I'll maybe up to you if you think that either defense in this game is going to I think this could be a really good defensive game.
It could.
But I think we'll
Yeah.
get to that in a moment. So yeah, that's the crux of it. I know a lot of people are listening, so let me kind of stop the visual point part here, but it should be fun. So I encourage all users to give it a shot. SmashUpSports.com. A chance to have play for free, but have a chance to win some money on the big game.
Yeah, and I'll make sure we'll put that, and I'll even share that with my my personal Facebook group, just because I know a lot of our friends do fantasy sports. I know a lot of our buddies and their father-in-laws love doing stuff. This may actually be something that we might be able to get more of their father-in-laws in on, because it's not, like you said, it's more gaming based than it is gambling. And I think that's kind of what, we do have friends who, yes, they kind of like playing fantasy football for the money, but at the same time, it'd be cool because, they're starting their lives, they're having kids. Now it's like, let's just play for fun. Let's just do stuff for fun. And I think this right here is an absolute gem. And I'm really happy that we were able to see that from you. And we're definitely trying to get the word out to our friends about this. So we'll get more detail towards the end of the episode. Let's kind of transition now over to
one last note for you here, and then we can transition. So I just thought of two. I'm going to go ahead and I just in the moment here, I'm creating a promo code for you guys. Shovicks, same as name, SHOVICKS. No punctuation or anything. When your users hit the registration page, the spot to put in a promo code. Anyone who puts in this promo code is Shovicks. If they register and they play the week of the Super Bowl, they set at least one lineup, we'll deposit $5 in their account. So they don't even have to win. They'll walk away a winner no matter what. So you can let your listeners and the people in your Facebook group know that. Chance to get just a little more cash before Valentine's Day after they've ignored their significant others for the last several months.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
We appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll definitely make sure to get that out there to everybody. So I guess let's get your football background. Who are you a fan of? Kind of, are you excited? Are you Chiefs fatigue? Kind of like I'm getting. Unlike my brother here, I'm the Broncos fan of the group. He's the Chiefs fan. Let's give it to us.
So, Corey, you and I are going to get along. We're going to team up on Austin pretty quickly here. I am a 49ers fan, lifelong.
Hey.
Mostly pretty good, as you can imagine. I don't really like either of these teams, but now my co-founder, Hauck, he's a lifelong Eagles fan. So he is singing Fly, Eagles, Fly all week. Or he's also had fun misspelling the name like the mayor did. EGLEA, however she spelled it. But so I'm a Niners fan, so definite Chief fatigue. I really want us to beat them at some point, but I am definitely cheering for the Eagles this week. As much as there's a bit of a rivalry there, we have always beaten them when we've had at least one quarterback, so I don't feel quite the same way.
If it makes you feel any better, when the Chiefs and Niners aren't playing, I'm actually like a pretty big 49ers, I don't want to say fan, but they are one of my favorite teams outside of the Chiefs to watch. Because I'm a defensive guy, so I think that probably explains everything, right? Especially recently. So I know there's hatred towards the Chiefs, and I get it. Like, when you win, people hate you. It happens. You get annoyed. It's whatever. But I want to throw out there that I do like the Niners. I'm a big Niners fan outside of when they play the Chiefs.
Austin, that is very kind of you. And listen, in the spirit of brotherhood and all, Branch will say this. When the Niners aren't playing, the Chiefs are playing, I still hate them. So I just set the olive branch on fire. It wasn't a real one, but
yeah, that's fair.
You're right. There's one a lot. It's maybe jealousy. So,
and I think that's what it could be too. It's just kind of like, we sat through the Tom Brady era. Tom this, Tom that, Patriots this, Patriots that, and then Tom even leaves the Patriots and goes to the Buccaneers and still gets a Super Bowl out of that. So it's kind of like, what the hell? So let's jump into the game real quick, and we kind of dove in each side of the ball and kind of what people's thoughts were on, who has an advantage. So who do you think? It is a huge matchup, but the defenses can't face each other, right? So it's not like Chris Jones and those guys can go out and face Jalen Carter and those guys. I mean, it's the Chiefs offense, Eagles defense, Chiefs defense, Eagles offense. Who do you think has the edge as far as, does the Chiefs offense or the Eagles defense kind of have the edge?
Man, I hate to say it. This is my head and my heart go two different directions. My heart says the Eagles because I just don't want to see the Chiefs win. My head says the Chiefs. Mahomes just knows how to make a play. Eagles defense has been good, but I don't think they're going to be able to confuse them the way they have other quarterbacks. And man, that Chiefs defense is just so good. And I feel like they're going to. The Chiefs loves to take away your best weapon. So I feel like the Chiefs will zone in on stopping Saquon. I think they're going to dare Hurts to beat them. I think Hurts is a good quarterback, and I think he could. Don't get me wrong; he's not bad by any stretch. But I think they'll mix with the pressure. I think they'll mix with some reads. I think they'll force a turnover too. I think it'll be a close game again. But we put it this way: if it is a close game and it gets down to the final 5 minutes, and the Chiefs and Eagles both
Where
get a
this is
possession,
going.
or put another way, let's say there's two scenarios here. Eagles score, take a 2-point lead. There's a minute and a half left, and Mahomes gets the ball. Or that exact same scenario, and Jalen Hurts gets the ball. Who do you trust to go win you the game? I trust Mahomes. I'm not saying Hurts can't do it, but the fact that I feel so dicey about it, I think is a sign.
Yeah, and I think if you were to have that scenario where if Jalen Hurts was down two with a minute and a half to go, Chiefs are going to blitz him every single time. That's when the
Oh, yeah.
pressure is going to amp up. They're going to make him. You're going to beat us with your arm, and we know you're not a very good quarterback when you're getting blitzed. Have fun. We know when you try to scramble, not very good because he's indecisive on how he wants to scramble. And we talked about this last night too. Of he's a better runner than Patrick Mahomes. But Patrick kind of predetermines, hey, I know if I'm getting pressure from which side, I know where I'm going. Whereas Jalen Hurts kind of stands there with the football square up to the line. Now you worry about strip sacks. So I think that's where he gets in trouble. I think he needs more QB designed runs, and I think no matter what, you got to get Saquon his normal touches, even if he's getting stopped early. You got to be able to establish the run game. And I think at the end, I'm with you. I think the Eagles may have a little bit more just because of Saquon. I think he does kind of put them over, but you don't want it to be a close game in the fourth quarter. I mean, we saw what happened to Buffalo, back and forth, back
Yeah.
and forth. So, what
Yeah,
do you think Philly has to do differently than what Buffalo did?
no, and I think he was spot on, right? With what he thinks. We can go back to the last time they played the Super Bowl. If you look at Jalen Hurts' numbers, he didn't play bad. But the Chiefs did do enough to force that turnover, that fumble six. Like Jalen Hurts, his final night, I think he threw for over 350 yards, like had a really
Mhm.
good game. But to what you said, like it came down to those little plays that doesn't make Jalen Hurts bad. It's just you trust Patrick more than Jalen, and we can just look at the last Super Bowl as proof of that.
Yeah, and I think for the Eagles to have a chance, they're going to have to hit the big play. Buffalo got a couple, but I think one of the things that really impressed me last week is the Bills did what you would want to do, right? Spagnuolo was designing a lot of really exotic and different blitzes, and Buffalo seemed to anticipate those were coming. And the entire second half, they kept trying to. Austin, you probably know exactly when they kept trying to get like a screenplay, a draw, a quick. Like they kept doing what you would normally do, diagnose as a way to beat the blitz. Let's get it out. Let's get it in the flat, and let's try to break a big play. And your guys did such a fantastic job, not just of covering it, but of tackling. And I think the place that the Bills got to a couple of times, but couldn't consistently, is beating you down the field. So if you're going to blitz and you're going to cover the flats, you've got to buy the quarterback a couple seconds, but you got to get the ball down the field. If they can do that to Brown and to Smith, they've got a chance. But they've got to hit a few home runs and force you guys to back up off the line. Either stop covering the flats so they can go to the outside and they can open that up for Barkley, or stop you guys blitzing so that Hurts has some time to make decisions. I think Corey's spot on. If Hurts gets pressured, his decision making and his processing, it's not terrible, but it's not at the level of someone like Mahomes.
Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah,
You're spot on with the down the field, middle of the field, right? Like even when the Chiefs are at their best and maybe not sending those all out blitzes, still a little weak down the field and in the middle of the field. So if you can get Hurts a couple seconds to hit those parts when we're sending those blitzes, uh, it 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 wouldn't even just kind of keep him in the game. That kind of will swing the game, I believe.
Yeah.
Because those exotic all out blitzes, those are timed up. We don't, he sends blitzes, but those all out exotic ones, those are at big moments. So if you're able to do that in those big moments, I mean, it's the Super Bowl. Momentum is even more important than usual. So yeah, I think down the field, in the middle of the field, that's spot on. If they're able to have success there.
And I think another thing that we haven't, I'm actually surprised we didn't cover this at all when we were talking even last week. Uh, the Chiefs special teams so far in the playoffs, whether it's the kickoff, punt return game, that's kind of been an advantage for the Chiefs. So I think Eagles are going to have to make sure that they have their special teams locked in, because anytime you can have a chance to flip the field, you need to be able to take advantage of that. But Remigio, whoever that Remigio for the Chiefs, his kick and punt returns the last couple of weeks have kind of flipped it, kind of what you were talking about, flipping momentum. Don't let him be that guy that gets the Chiefs back on track. Like, trust your defense. You have a good defense. Honestly, if I'm punting the ball out of bounds every time. Not even going to give them a chance. And obviously, if you're doing the kickoffs, you got to kick it out of the back of the end zone. Like, you can't let the special teams is kind of an underrated part of this. And even with the new kickoff rule and the dynamic kick and how they're going about it, I don't think people are talking enough about the special teams. Kind of both of you, what are you guys looking for as far as like special teams and how important this is for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I'll let him go first to just see. He might touch every point that I might be thinking of.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think it is important, and I think that, I mean, first of all, let's talk about this wasn't the point specifically making, but the field goal kickers, right? Bucker's been about as dependable as you can get, whereas the Eagles, they've had a lot of missed field goals, which they've gotten away with, but in a Super Bowl that could be a 3-point game, one missed field goal, as the my Niners can tell you, that can be the difference. We very much miss Gould, right?
Yeah.
It's not been the same with our Moody has been a bit moody. So yeah, I think field goal kicking is one that is going to be crucial. They could absolutely swing the game. And again, down to 45, 50-yard field goal, Bucker. Well, I'm blanking on the Eagles kicker. Help me out here.
Jake Elliott.
In my head, maybe I'm getting older because in my head I want to say Akers, but that's
Oh,
no longer the case. See, Elliott has not been. I would not trust him. Both those guys are kicking a 50-yarder for the game. I'm going to take Bucker, right? And then you're right. I mean, I feel like the Chiefs' return game has been really good. The Eagles been kind of interesting. I feel like they had Gainwell doing the returns for the majority of the season, and he was a really good returner. And then it's not like they've been dialing him up in the offense a lot, but they've kind of been going to Shipley a bit more the last couple of weeks. And so I don't know what that's about. And again, maybe this is just my own past generational trauma as a Niners fan, but rookies in these big games, I remember Kyle Williams fumbling twice on punts against the Giants. And so I don't know what they're going to do in this game, but seems like they should stick with Gainwell, but they may not.
Yeah, I agree with the kickers for sure. Dave Tube, the Chiefs special teams coach, has always been kind of underrated. But let's be honest, the most casual fans aren't really thinking of special teams, right? They want to see big hits defensively and a lot of plays offensively, and special teams kind of swept under the rug. But I'm actually curious with the punt game. I know Chiefs aren't aggressive. We'll punt when we need to punt. We kind of go by the old school rules. If you're in no man's land, we'll probably go for it. The Eagles, I feel like as long as they're not backed up to the end zone, they go for it on fourth down. So I don't really have any kind of scouting report on their punt team, right? Like, have they punted this year? Was it good? Who is their punter? So,
Yeah,
I think
we have Hurts and Barkley at. So that's the one scenario we didn't talk about. If both teams have 90 seconds to score, I'm taking Mahomes. If both teams are kicking a field goal, I'm taking Butker. If both teams are on the half yard line and need to get into the end zone, then I'm taking Hurts. I'm taking the tush push. So that's the one Eagles advantage.
Yeah, and it's a huge advantage. So special teams, I think Chiefs that's the one unit they had the clear advantage. Um, offense and defense, so I think it's kind of personal preference on who's going to have the advantage, right? So it could come down to special teams. I still think it comes down to interior defensive line. If the Eagles and Jalen Carter and Milton Williams and everything can get up the middle, I think we'll be singing a different song. Because that's the one place that you can rattle Mahomes is right up the pocket. So Eagles are strong there defensively. I know it's not a sexy position, right? No one's going into this super excited to see Jalen Carter and Milton Williams, but that's kind of those little spots where games can be decided. So it's going to
I'm
be a
old
good
school.
game.
Give me good, sound, fundamental, soul crushing defense.
Speaking
So,
to me right there.
yeah. So we've kind of been posing the question to the other guests this week about give us someone to kind of keep an eye on. Like we know there's Mahomes, we know there's Hurts, we know there's Barkley, we know there's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Kind of give us someone from each offense to kind of maybe be that X factor guy that no one's thinking of right now that may be able to have like a breakout. So like last against the Bills, that was Worthy kind of having his breakout game,
Yeah.
kind of letting that. So what are you keeping an eye on for each of those offenses?
So let's start with Philly because I think it's their X factors almost more important. Like the Chiefs are just so weird in how they win, and sometimes there's not an X factor. Mahomes just hits us open, like he's Mahomes, right? Mahomes is the X, Y, and the Z factor, and he just finds guys with like a sliver of room. So the Eagles is a big one. I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? It's easier to beat the Chiefs down the seam. All year long, they've been really good at defending the outside receivers. Spectacularly so. If you can beat them, it's down the middle, it's down the seam. And so I think Goddard is someone who I would flag.
That's been the
Brown
one.
and Smith, they need to make a couple of big plays. All eyes will be on them. Chiefs will certainly load up trying to stop Barkley. But Goddard is a very good tight end, probably underrated. He's banged up in the middle of the season. He's a big target, and if Goddard can have one of his games where he has 80 to 100 yards and a touchdown, I feel much better about the Eagles' chances. If he has 2 catches for 25 yards, probably going to be pretty hard for Philly to win. And then on the Chiefs side, I hate that some of my thunder got stolen last week because I would say Worthy, right? Worthy is sort of the de facto. Do they have a number one receiver outside of Kelsey? If I've got to pick someone else, I'm going to say, like I said, I don't really have a great one. It could be Gray, it could be Watson making a big play. But just because I absolutely love the guy from years and years of carrying me in fantasy, I'm going to say Dustin Hopkins. The old man of 30, right? Not that old, but 30, 31.
Yeah.
If he can first trip to the Super Bowl, if he can pull out one big game, not necessarily a big game, but just a couple of big catches, he's a guy who could be an X factor, make a big difference. And man, I don't want to see the Chiefs win. Man, I want to just see it burned all to the ground. And I'm so sorry, Austin, but
okay.
The hatred is just flowing through me like pure Star Wars style. However, if the Chiefs have to win, I'm going to feel really good if Hopkins at least gets a ring. And I'd love to see him make a couple of big plays to get that ring and not just be like the old guy who gets a ring but has like 1 catch for 5 yards. I'd love to see him be the guy who has like 6 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And
man, if he does that, we're winning. We're winning.
Story career. So what was that?
Yeah, if he does that, we're winning. So I'm on board with this. Like, we get nothing from D-Hop usually. So if we get something, you're gonna have to.
We kind of thought when they traded for Hopkins that it was going to be one of those like, oh man, now they got that big guy that they're going to be able to. And they really didn't use him much, and they still even throughout the playoffs. I mean, he had a couple catches here and there, nothing too crazy and wild, which is just wild to me because I also had him on fantasy teams for years. Those Texans days, and even when he was with Kyler in Arizona, man, he he dominated, and I loved having him on my fantasy team because all those deep passes that Kyler was able to throw to him, that's what I thought the Chiefs would be able to do. They just haven't. So he is someone. I mean, that's a good pick. I mean, just seeing if he's going to get on the field and how much they actually are able to use him. I think one that we talked last week, and he was on Denver earlier this year. Samaje Perine. I wish they would use him a little more. And I was telling my brother the other day, just when we, just kind of casually talking, that I kind of wish someone would give him a full-time chance, because the dude's he has tree trunk legs. He runs hard. He can catch the ball, pass blocks really well. So I'd kind of like to see him have kind of a breakout game, and he's always someone that I've pulled for and I've rooted for. I was kind of curious on why Denver let him go, because Denver obviously didn't have very good running backs, but I think he fills that Jerick McKinnon role that they've had the previous years.
Niners legend. Oh.
Niners legend Jerick McKinnon. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember our first big signings, him and Juice, when Kyle and Lynch came to town. I'm with you. Yeah. Piron's a guy. I think most fantasy owners will know him because he's been a handcuff for years. So just, you're right. Has never quite gotten the chance. Been in Cincinnati behind Mixon, in Denver behind their poo-poo platter of various running backs. So he seemed like a guy.
Big old poo-poo platter. And that's what was crazy to me. Like, you can't tell me he couldn't beat any of those guys out. Like, come on, Sean, you're smarter than that. Like, come on. So yeah, he's been kind of reliable, essentially. And then for the Eagles, I kind of like Kenneth Gainwell. I don't know if I know he got a concussion or had a concussion, but I think he's good to go. I was looking at the injury reports earlier. I don't remember seeing him on there, but I think I think a good way to beat the Chiefs is a screen game. If you can get the screen at the right time on those blitzes, I think he can be an extension of that. So I kind of like the two backup running backs here. Well, third string running back and backup running back, to kind of be those guys that you don't really think of. It's easy to say A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, but I like Kenneth Gainwell in this situation for Philly. Bro, what do you got?
Yeah, I think the kind of the direction I'm going to head, and I kind of mentioned it earlier. I know we're supposed to be picking offensive players. We make the rules on this show, so I'm making a new one. I still think the most important player on each team is Jalen Carter and Chris Jones. I agree with Dallas Goedert from an offensive standpoint. Tight ends have been an Achilles heel all year. If he has the 2 catches that he did the previous time they played in the Super Bowl, it's going to make things way tougher. Eagles' offense is so stacked that I think anybody else you name would just kind of fall under, like, it's kind of a cheating X factor, right? Like Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, like all those dudes are studs. I feel comfortable picking them. So I'm sticking with the nose tackles. I think whichever one can just dominate the game more and make the quarterback uncomfortable. I know it's not sexy, and I said it earlier, but whichever one of those two has the better game, I would say more than likely that team's winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I'm a defensive guy, so that's why I'm on D-line, trenches, give it to me all day. So whichever one has a bigger game, I think that's who wins. It's that simple, guys.
I mean, listen, as a Niners fan, so I'm hoping there's a way we can get Myles Garrett now that he's asking. Can you imagine Bosa and Garrett as bookends? That might be the one thing. We might kill a few quarterbacks next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that would really, really, really love to have Myles Garrett.
Talk about a guy who nobody besides Niners fans and like defensive people like. Everyone talks about like TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, and then there's like, well, what about Nick Bosa, right? Like, I feel like he's right there in that. And I have to give a big shout out. I know it's random, but the fact when my brother and I found out, we were just like, they don't make them like this anymore. But when we found out Fred Warner was playing with that like broken or fractured ankle, like nobody does that anymore, right? And he was still going out playing at an elite level. Like you could tell he was bothered a little bit, but like the fact he still played is unreal in today's game.
Well, it's wild to me. Listen, I know the NBA draft really well. I know it's a totally different sport. I don't know NFL draft that well. Like I will follow it. I will know players. I'll usually, see watch the Senior Bowl. I don't imagine I'm not like a college football scout. I'm not someone with any special insight into the NFL draft like I do
Right.
NBA. But Warner, I remember we got him. I remember every scouting report, everything I'm reading and seeing on this guy. I'm just like, how is he a third round pick? This guy just seems like he does everything you'd look for in a modern linebacker. And somehow, when we got him in the third round, there was one I was happy about it. Right about now, I also was really happy with it. I just got Michael James a few years before. I thought he was going to be our home run hitter. So that just shows how much I know about the draft. But I feel like every few years, the guy that just drops shockingly low, where you're like, how this guy just seems like the kind of guy that a smart team will find a way to use in the NFL.
Yeah, and then the Niners are, I mean, I know there's been a lot of hate towards the Chiefs, but I'm still going to keep my level head on this. Like, the Niners are one of the teams, right? Like, they're a smart ran team. Like, from John Lynch to Shanahan to, like, Brock Purdy, they are set in the positions that matter, and they're a smart organization. So that's why teams like the Niners always find those guys, right? Like, our favorite is Dominic Pooney. We're big KU guys, Kansas Jayhawks guys. We knew he was going to be good because we saw him play in college, maybe a little biased, but, like, teams like the Niners, right? Like, gonna find people like that. Fred Warner, like, we could probably think of a laundry list of players that the Niners are just, since they're a well-ran organization, they find things like that. Brock Purdy in the 7th round.
Yeah, I mean, after Trey Lance in the first, that's
Yeah.
talk about getting it right. We seem to have a history of blowing the first round pick, but then hitting a home run towards the back. Do you guys listen? We need an offensive lineman this year. Do you guys have a favorite this year's draft?
Not from KU.
No, not from KU, and we actually do. We love the draft, and we kind of do draft episodes, probably 2 or 3 weeks after the season ends. We'll kind of dive into some baseball stuff. I know this is a huge interior offensive line draft. There's a couple tackles that'll be out there. You guys could possibly find that Trent Williams replacement, or at least someone for him to kind of learn or teach to take over. So we'll definitely we'd like to break down the offensive line and D line. We a little extra special with those two position groups, just because those are the guys that aren't appreciated as much. But yeah, I know Ohio State they have some offensive linemen coming out. Penn State, Texas A&M, I believe, has some. So there's not going to be a shortage of choices. And again,
It sounds
it's
like
a crapshoot, right?
it
Like,
sounds
you got to
like
just
you
get
don't want
lucky.
to draft them in the first round, right? Like, if you draft a first round offensive lineman, sounds like a bust. So hopefully you guys find that mid to late round guy, and that's where you waste it
Yeah,
on.
we don't seem to like we took McGlinchey that 1 year. We seem to have shied away from first round offensive lineman. I think second round is where we probably take offensive line, second or third. I think in the first, I defensive line makes a ton of sense if the right guy drops. I wouldn't. This is Shanahan we're talking about. I would not be surprised if we took either Genty or like Warren. If those guys drop, like the ability to add a dynamic like offensive player in the first, where those guys are still at a premium. I would not be surprised to see. I mean, Genty in particular seems to fit Shanahan's like ideal running back to a T. Can
Oh yeah,
catch, can block, can run. That's why no Niners fan will want to hear it. It will get so much crud if it happens. I don't hate it though, because I'm like, look, it gives us another weapon. It means we don't have to run CMC into the ground. If CMC comes back and soft tissue injuries are adding up, it means we've got an heir apparent who, even if he's not at quite as good as CMC, even if he's like a Dalvin Cook or something, I've seen that comparison. Prime Dalvin Cook would still be really good in a Shanahan lineup. And, there's a lot of ways to keep the defense off balance and you could run them in the backfield together, right? You could put them out, both of them could split wide and play. So obviously we need to improve our offensive line, but one way to buy more time for the quarterback or to keep the defense from blitzing is to have, CMC and Gente going out two different directions. And
That would be wild.
as a defense, you pick your poison. If either of those guys can take it to the house.
Man, and just to kind of circle that up, right? Like, if Genty goes there, just think how much that would hurt, like, McCaffrey's fantasy stock, right? Like, kind of what made him a league winner was he was basically a receiver one and a running back one. So man, if something like that happens, I mean, obviously it's going to take a stock already, like the soft tissue injuries. But the one thing I'm curious on is you're a Niners fan, and I know kind of right towards the end of the season there were some rumors that people might try to trade for Shanahan. Are you someone who would be fine with trading for Shanahan, or like are the Niners fans still like fully on board and appreciate
Oh,
Shanahan?
fully on board. Fully on board. Listen, if you can get a good coach, I mean, I think those rumors from the outside. I don't think Lynch or the Niners organization was ever considering that. If you look, we've been lucky to go from Harbaugh to only a couple coaches later, Shanahan. We have lived through Tom Sula. We have lived through Chip Kelly. We have lived through mediocrity. Prior to that, we lived through Singletary. Oh gosh, Mariucci. So many names. It was so
Yeah.
bad. I didn't want to think about him, but no, I think Shanahan. People love to nitpick. So here's the thing. Remember Andy Reid with the Eagles got nitpicked. He's the winningest coach in Eagles history. And people are like, oh, he's not clutch. He can't win a big game. Like, they barely lost to an elite Patriots team in the Super Bowl. I mean, looking back to that, there's another weird thing that happens in sports where we tend to like really overrate some players in the moment. And it's hard. It's hard to discern, like, is it the coaching, the GM, the players? But like both for McNabb and for Andy Reid, you look back at those Eagles offenses, and McNabb was throwing the ball to Freddie Mitchell and Todd Pinkston, both of whom were out of the league as soon as they left the Eagles. They weren't like old men. They like left at like 25 and couldn't even stick one more season. But McNabb made them look like NFL players. And Reid, the two of them combined. So no, I mean Shanahan has taken us to multiple Super Bowls, multiple NFC championships. We didn't make the Super Bowl. Like, I will cling to him until he's, old and gray and just can't do the job anymore. And if the worst thing you have to say about him is he'll get you to the Super Bowl and he'll take a lead to the fourth quarter, but he might lose it. Sure, I will take that over 99% of the coaches that have come through the NFL.
Yeah, that's kind of the conversation we had, right, when we read those rumors. And we know inside the organization, I mean, John Lynch did come out and shoot him down like immediately, right? But that's what we said. It's like Kyle Shanahan's one of the top 3 coaches, probably one of the top 2 offensive minded coaches, right? So it's like we get why teams would want to trade for him, right? But like there had to be no like actual friction or anything to that. But I was just curious on how like actual Niners fans feel about their coach. And I know sometimes heartache kind of makes you overreact, so I wasn't sure.
And like, what are you going to trade for him? Are you going to give up even like a second round pick? Like, that sounds nice, but like, look at our history of second round picks. Like, who are we? Or any team. I mean, if I'm not even like talking about the Niners. Like,
right.
Look at the second round. Who are you getting that is like, even if you get a starter, who are you getting that replaces a great coach? It's just not. I mean, you would really have to look at like a top 10 pick and really believe like you're going to pull in, a superstar. You would need to draft like a Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen and make you think like, give me this guy and we'll go find a different head coach.
Yeah, I mean, you come from the Shanahan tree, your dad, obviously, right? So it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And that was, I think, the first mistake Denver made when they didn't hire Shanahan and they went with Vance Joseph. And that's not a shot at Vance Joseph. I mean, that's Kyle Shanahan. I mean, his dad is obviously. I don't need to sit here and explain who his dad is and what his dad means to Denver and the organization. I'm still not really over that move. When there's one thing I did dislike about John Elway, it's that move. Because
listen, if it's you can take a little bit of a shot at Vance Joseph based on how things turned out.
Yeah.
Sure, he's a good gentleman. Sure, he's a good dude, but the results were not particularly pretty. Now, the crazy one is Washington, right? How did Washington that Shanahan they're all the coaches? If they just took any one of the coaches on that roster and elevated them after Mike, they would be. Now they're doing well again. They would have probably avoided a lot of heartache, but that's got to be like the biggest all-star roster of coaches I've ever seen.
And they were all babies too. Like you just promote one of them and you have them for 10, 15 years. Like there's no reason to let any of them go. I mean, yes, Mike kind of came to the end of the road, but you had a long list of guys right there that you could have just within.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's it's crazy, and it's part of our favorite. We like seeing the coaching carousel and how it kind of plays out. I mean, you never want to see a coach get fired, but at the same time, it's kind of the same organizations, right? Like over and over and over again. So it's like, okay, well, who are they going to hire this time that they think is going to get them out? And then they don't really give them a chance. Like it's 1 or 2 years and it's performance based, but then you realize these ownerships and GMs aren't really giving those coaches much to work with.
Yep.
At the
Well,
end
the
of
circle of life in all sports, right? It's like at a certain point, you've got a team, you got the GM and the coach. The GM's usually in a bigger position of power, unless they've really been failing for a while. So it goes a couple of years and things aren't going the way they want. The first thing they can do, the first chip they have, is sacrifice the coach. Because it's either that, look, at some point you're talking to the owner. It's like, well, why is this not working? It's either you or it's the coach. You're going to say it's the coach. So like, look at New York right now. I mean, lucky for us, we just got Saleh back. And I don't know that Saleh's like a great head coach. We'll see. I think he'll probably get another shot at some point. But I will say that I don't think it is his fault that the Jets were a mess. I think he did about as. I'll also say I feel like about 90% of the coaches. There's only a handful of coaches in the league. Well, sorry. There's a handful of coaches in the league who probably elevate a team to get really more wins and do better than the talent. There are probably plenty of coaches who underperform talent. They cycle out pretty fast. There's a lot of coaches who basically get the amount of wins, plus or minus some luck factor from variance.
Right.
Exactly the amount of wins that the roster should get given their talent level. Saleh probably did that with the Jets. I think he did a perfectly fine job. The GM's going to sacrifice him, but the GM's the one who brought in Aaron Rodgers. The GM's the one who brought in just a horrible offensive line and a mess of players. Like, so the GM survived a bit, but it's the way it goes in this league.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's that time. We always ask people to give their Super Bowl predictions. We know who you're going, but we want the final score and who is maybe going to be your Super Bowl most valuable player.
All right. I'm going to give you 2 because I got it here, right? So I'm going to – the winners, I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm going to say the score is, let's say, 27-24. I think it's a close game. Maybe that's even a little bit high, but something around there. I mean, if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, the MVP is obvious. This is why I say 2, right? Obviously, I'm picking Pat Mahomes. If it's not Pat Mahomes, by some miracle, then I'm actually defaulting with Austin. It's probably got to be Jones because it's going to be defense, and it's going to be because the defense just wrecked Hurts and made a few big plays. So, and actually, that might be a defensive back who scores a pick 6 or 2, but I'm going to go with Jones as I think, like you said, the difference maker.
Yeah, so I want to make sure. He said he's picking the Chiefs to win.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. That was a whole hour of conversation, and you throw that curveball at the end. I definitely appreciate.
At the beginning, I said my heart said the Eagles, my head said the Chiefs. I want the Eagles to win, but if I had to bet $1 million on it, as if I have $1 million, I'm betting on the Chiefs, right?
Yeah, and no, I mean obviously I agree. Chiefs win. It's going to be a lot to a little. I think you're spot on. It's always the quarterback winning MVPs of the regular season, of divisional rounds, Super Bowls. Like Chiefs win, it's Mahomes. Eagle win, it's Hurts. You have the slight chance of it being Barkley, but yeah, I think Chiefs win. I'm with you, Patty MVP. But my side one I always take is George Karlaftis, just because that's my favorite player. That's right. Like, what's the chance that just like a pretty good defensive end wins the Super Bowl MVP over a quarterback? But we're all kind of like the way you guys are tired of the Chiefs. I'm tired of the quarterbacks. All right, like let's give other players love. Like when we beat I'm sorry to bring it, but like when we beat the Niners, Patty didn't deserve that MVP. Damian Williams deserved that MVP, but Patty got it. So Patty will get it. I hope it's George, but either way, Chiefs are 3-peating.
Yeah, I'm still not putting it out in the atmosphere. I've picked the Eagles all week. I'm sticking with the Eagles, damn it. I'm going, and the scores have fluctuated each week or each time, but I think it's still going to be a close game. I have it, we'll go 28-25. Weird score, but at the end of the day, Saquon, I am a big Saquon believer. I think Saquon brings a different dynamic to them. I don't think he's going to let them lose this game. He's going to do everything he can. and I think he has a couple big runs. We've seen the big runs come from Saquon throughout the playoffs. So give me Eagles 28-25. Saquon's going to win the
Boo.
MVP. And there you have it. Those are our Super Bowl predictions. Chris,
Can I give one more potential MVP here before
yeah,
we
that's
get
a
out of
good.
here?
Yeah,
I gotta say it. So if it's not Mahomes and if it's not Jones, and if we want to show some love to a different position, it could be Ron Torbert.
Hey, come on now. Come on now. Hey, if he's the MVP, that means we're winning. So let's go. Like I've heard it for the last like 5 years. So like I'll hear it for a little bit longer for a three-peat. I'm with it.
All right, so I had to make one last joke before we got out of here, but
Oh, that's
thank you guys.
so www.smashupsports.com. Go find them. I encourage everybody to make a Super Bowl lineup. Make a Super Bowl lineup. Give it a shot. Give it a chance. You never know. It could end up being that gem, and you guys may want to just keep going and get into the next football season. We'll definitely need to get you on again. This has actually been an absolute blast. This has been one of our favorite episodes we've been able to cover and do. I thank you for joining us. Find them on Instagram. And then, do you have any other social media or anything else that we can find you on?
Yeah, most platforms. So you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all at Smash Up Sports. Facebook too. So same handle across everything. Come find us. Come talk to us, and we look forward to give the game a try and let us know what you think. We love to hear your feedback.
Perfect. And that's going to wrap it up for us for the week. We're done. We are ready for the Super Bowl. We will have Super Bowl reactions next week. We'll be back hopefully on our normal night of Wednesday.
Maybe.
Find us on Apple, Spotify. The audio will be up in the next hour, and then we'll work on the videos, and all the videos will get posted up on YouTube Saturday or early Sunday morning, depending on how long it takes to kind of chop them up and make them look a little better. So, Chris, for Austin, thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks all.